first time in this venue and for this after the location came from the Diggy Palace.
No,
How's
no.
the experience at JLF been this year, especially after COVID?
No, this is not my first time at all. This is probably my fifth time.
And
So,
Clarkson.
huh?
In Clarkson.
Clark's
He meant in this venue, ma'am. Because
in this
earlier
venue,
it used to happen
in
in
Diggy Palace, yeah. In this venue, of course, this is the first because this is the first JLF here. So yes, and so what was the question? Sorry.
He was asking you how is it different from the earlier jailers you have attended?
The earlier JLF, I think, was it was. I don't know. I suppose it's the same really, except that there are many more people this year. I find, and because the festival was suspended for about 3 years or so. So now people have come back, with a vengeance, determined to enjoy every moment of the festival. And so there's a lot more security and a lot more protocol and a lot more things happening, which weren't. It was a slightly cozier atmosphere, I feel, earlier.
So you translate from Bangla to English.
Yes.
So it's always a task, especially when it comes to Indian languages, to capture the regionalities of that language into English. So how do you manage to do that, and how do you go about that?
See, basically what I feel is that translation is not about words. It's not about translating words or translating sentences or even translating paragraphs. Basically, what you need to do is to understand the spirit of the text. Whether it's a poem or a prose piece or whatever it is, it's the spirit which is important, and that needs to be conveyed to a larger audience. Basically, what do we do? We convert regional treasures into international ones. And so in doing that, we must certainly we must be very careful. Translators must be very careful in being able to transfer the spirit, the voice, and as well as the tonal quality also of the original writer, because otherwise one translation will be just like another. There won't be much difference, no diversity.
So women feature extensively in your books and in powerful roles too. Is that something that you go about intentionally, or is that something that comes organically to your writing?
Powerful women, yeah. Yeah, powerful women. No, I wouldn't say that all my women are very powerful. Basically, I am, if you call it, a gender-centric writer. Basically, even when I pick up translations, they have a gender slant to them. And when I do my own writing, of course, it's mostly about women. As you know, the latest book, Mendicant Prince, though it's about a court case which happened to a man, and a case of dual identity, etc., etc. So basically, but then somehow I've converted it into a woman's story, because the story is told through the voices of women. And I wouldn't say that all my women are strong. Yes, in say the book Suralakshmi Villa, which is pure fiction, the woman is very strong. Living in the 1920s, she had the guts to choose the man she wanted to marry. She remained unmarried till she was in her 30s, and then she chose a man who was totally, didn't belong to her caste. And didn't belong to her kind at all. She was actively discouraged, but she went ahead with it. Then within 5 years, she even decided to drop him, and so she just followed her own inclinations, her own instincts in life. And she was she's a kind of an enigma even to readers today. So yes, I do create strong women. There are strong women in Jorasanko and Daughters of Jorasanko, which is the story of the women of the Tagore family. But there are some weak characters also. If you choose to call them weak, women who do not confront, who do not question, who accept sociological their position in society, sociological terms, without really even questioning them or even dreaming of confronting or rebelling. So there are women, such women. But what I feel is that a lot of people tend to think that the strong are the best, the weak are to be looked down upon. I don't think that. I think the weak also have some great qualities in them. They are weak perhaps because they can see every point of view. The strong, they are strong because they have one goal before them and they just follow it without regard for other people's thoughts and feelings. So I don't put a great value on strength per se. Strength has its merits, but the weak also have their qualities, the qualities of tenderness, sensitivity, an ability to look upon all sides of things, and then therefore because they are seeing so many points of view, they can't really revolt. So like it's the difference between say Hamlet and Othello. Hamlet, because he is an intellectual, he is constantly analyzing and he's thinking, he can't act because he feels that he has to think a lot more before taking an action. But Othello is just told your wife is he doesn't even bother to find out, and he just goes and kills her. So the man of action and the man of thought are different from each other. The man of action is not necessarily the strong man, and the man of thought necessarily the weak man. So this is the way I look upon my characters.
Following up on something you said earlier.
Louder.
Following up on something you said earlier, you said that you intentionally translate women writers. So I also wanted to ask, how do you choose the titles that you want to translate?
No, it's not true that I translate women authors. In fact, most of my translations are from male authors. Sunil, Gangopadhyay, Tagore, Saratchandra, but they are writers who are sensitive to women's causes. All the novels that I've picked up have women at the center. If not at the center, at least they occupy a prominent position. So that's how I pick. But then it's not only because of the women that I pick up the works. You see, basically I feel that when one is translating, why is one translating? One is translating because one wants to make one's own regional treasures, our own small treasures like Bengali, excellent works, but they are read only by Bengalis. Now to make them available to a wider readership, an international readership, the purpose being that I want to share the best of my culture and my literature with you. And so one has to be very careful about picking up the most significant authors of your tradition, of your literary tradition, and also their most significant works. I think there the question of selection comes in, and that selection is very important. There's no point just translating this person, that person, because people won't be interested. You give them something that will hold their attention, interest them, and in the process you're doing a service to your own authors, because you're holding them, you're sort of transferring their work to a larger multicultural readership.
In recent times, we're seeing a lot of translations being promoted. There are a lot of awards that are coming forward. So how do you see this entire world that's shifting towards, and how do you think it's changed in the last few years? What's your opinion about that?
It's an interesting question, because when I first translated, I did songs of Tagore, 100 lyrics from Tagore's Gitabitaan. It was practically a pioneering work. At that time people said, what's the point of translating, who's going to read translation anyway? I was actively discouraged. But for some reason, whatever, it became quite the rage. It held people's attention. And I had been very scared of the Bengali purists. I was very scared that they would land on me, and say that what is this, who is this Aruna Chakravarti who lives in Delhi, what does she know about Tagore, what does she know about Bengali literature, how dare she translate such a, but somehow it went out very well. And after that, I mean, I'm not saying that I started the trend, but certainly when I was translating, there was only one other major translator, and that was William Radici. You may have heard of him. So our books actually came out more or less simultaneously, his select poems and my songs of Tagore. After that, translation became an important thing, and gradually, it came to a point when I would take my own other works, creative works, people would say, oh, but you are such a great translator, you are such a successful translator, why are you doing your own writing, translate. So then I said, okay, I'll translate, but let me also do my own work. And so gradually, so now what I do is I do both. I do my own creative writing and translations also. It has now become a very big thing, and particularly now after the Booker Award to Gitanjali Shri, it's reached fantastic dimensions, and a lot of awards are being given. I too got an award, the Sahitya Akademi Award for Srikanta.
Can you talk about your how weaving in fact and fiction works, and how do you choose what to fictionalize, and how are you going to fictionalize that? How are you going to create the narrative that it is?
I've already done it. So, so you see, basically, this is a very common story. I mean, almost most Bengalis of my generation, at least, know this story. It was a famous court case, as those who read it know, that there was this prince who was reported to have died in Darjeeling and been cremated, and then 12 years later, a sannyasi comes to the royal to the kingdom, to the capital of Bhawan, and says that, and claims that he's the prince and he lost his memory and he's just regained it. Now, basically, the facts are there; they are documented. They are, you can get them anywhere. They are there in the public domain. So what I thought was, how do I, if I write this book, and I was kind of prompted to write it by certain friends who were distantly related to this family, to the royal family. So they, kept telling me that you've written 3, fictional family histories, the Inheritors and Jorasanko and Daughters of Jorasanko. Why don't you do one on the Powell? It's a very interesting story. So I said, yes, it's an interesting story, but the facts are all there. So what do I contribute? What do I add to it that justifies my retelling of the story? And then I thought that why don't I tell it? Because as I said, of my gender, my preoccupation with the gender question, I thought, how would it be if I tell the story through the voices of the women? Because the women were certainly impacted by what happened. And yet, in the details of the case, they are just names. Nobody knows anything about them, what kind of women they were, how they suffered under, the kind of, my goodness, this is worse than they were. So anyway, so I decided to do it through a variety of voices. So I decided to use this multi-vocal strategy, and then so in doing that, I had to, of course, add a lot of fiction, and in the fictionalizing, I gave these names an identity, a distinctive personality, each of them a distinctive personality, characteristics, dreams, aspirations, frustrations, and I talked about their interpersonal relations, and gradually fleshed them into lifelike characters. So in doing that, of course, I enjoyed myself thoroughly. I let my imagination run riot, and I created a world which people don't know. They know the facts of the case, but it became a kind of at least I like to think so. I hope my readers think so too. The world came dynamically alive, with the characters being real, true characters. The case also, I mean, these imaginative, revelations of people, self-revelations, I think created that world, the ethos of the world in which this whole thing took place. What am I writing?
Reading right now. And what are you writing as well?
What am I reading right now? I read a number of books together, and basically, I love reading about other countries, other cultures, other religions. So I read a lot of works a lot of very new, fresh voices are appearing from countries like Afghanistan, Turkey, Iran, and then these Spain, and Cuba and all the. I read a lot of works which come from there. So my latest was a book called Three Sisters, which is set in Germany, the Nazi Germany. So that's what I read recently. And as for what I'm writing, I'm actually toying with a project of translating, again translation, short stories from Bengali writers, but with short stories about Dalit women.